Welcome! On this channel we talked a lot about stress recently. There was my 3-part series How to Deal with Stress, and last week we talked a bit about mindfulness in relation to stress. So I thought maybe it's time to go for some different topics for a change. But before we do that, I'd like to wrap the topic of stress up a bit, and I'd like to give you some advice if you want to pursue the topic further, what materials you can look at. Stress is quite a complex and far-reaching topic. A stress experience can be a minor nuisance, like when a vending machine does not accept your coin, or when your favorite brand of butter is sold out, or when you have to stop at a red light. But a stress experience can also be a life-shattering crisis, like the death of a loved one, or a severe illness, or when you are the victim of a violent crime. When we talk about stress, we usually refer to everyday stress that is generated by our work and our everyday problems in our personal lives. And this is also what I refer to in my videos. But even there is a very broad range of topics. For some of you, maybe you have a stressful job and that is the biggest source of stress for you. Or maybe raising children is very stressful. Maybe you are in a very difficult partnership, relationship. Maybe there is a lot of trouble because of a lack of money. There is quite a wide range of possible sources of stress, and there is also a wide range of ways how we experience stress, how we feel about stress, and how we react to stress. So stress is a very, very individual topic. So, as I mentioned a few times in my videos, the important thing here is to find out which approach to dealing with stress is suited for your personal situation and which ways work best for you. If you want to change something in your life, no one will be able to hand you some manual, and certainly not some chubby bald guy on YouTube. In my video series, I presented 3 approaches to dealing with stress: instrumental, regenerative, and mental stress management. Now, a good first step is to look at each of those and figure out what changes you can make in your own life, how you can use these different approaches to improve your own handling of stress. I would certainly recommend to try each approach, see how things work out. I especially recommend not to skip instrumental stress management, not to be too quick to say, oh, I can change the situation anyway. I better proceed to compensating for stress and better coping with stress, and don't try to improve the overall situation itself. No, really try to see if you can't make some adjustments to decrease the overall amount of stress in your life before you proceed to compensating and coping. Now, after trying out all those approaches, you will probably find the one that works best for you and where there is the most room for improvement in your life, and then, of course, proceed to pursue that one. I derived this separation into those three approaches from a German program for a stress management course. I have a manual for trainers who hold stress management courses, but unfortunately there is no English translation of this book, so I cannot recommend a book to you that will have this separation into those three approaches. However, if you have a look at some books about stress, you will clearly recognize the topics. For example, there are some books about stress that also include topics like time management, self-management, that try to help you organize your life in a way where you don't have as much stress, and to improve your coping capabilities to better deal with stress. So basically, they strongly rely on what we call instrumental stress management. And there are also other books that focus a lot on relaxation, where different relaxation techniques are presented, and often they also include meditation, and they often include mindfulness, and they basically focus on regenerative stress management. And of course, there are also books who focus on the mental aspect, on how we perceive stress and how our own feelings and thoughts and our own character influences our stress experience, and how we can better deal with stress experiences and learn not to make actually make things worse for us due to problematic thoughts and such. So basically what I presented to you as mental stress management. If you want to learn to better deal with the stress in your own lives, you can also take part in a stress management course. In Germany, such courses are funded by public health insurance. Now, obviously, things are different in different countries, but if you have health insurance, maybe they offer such courses, and also maybe your company offers stress management courses. And if not, there are also probably offers from companies or maybe public institutions. So this is a good way to learn more about dealing with stress together with other people, and with teacher being present, whom you can ask questions and everything. Now, maybe some of you aren't just interested in better dealing with the stress in your own lives, but maybe some of you also would like to further pursue stress as a topic for purely scientific reasons, to learn about stress, understand how stress works, and learn more about stress as a general topic. If you would like to do that, I would recommend to have a look at some further stress theories. In my videos, I presented 3 of those: the fight-or-flight response, the general adaptation syndrome, and the transactional model. I chose those because they help you to get a good basic understanding of what stress is and how stress works, and it's easy to relate them to the different approaches for dealing with stress. But there are There are several other interesting theories and models for explaining stress. For example, allostasis is quite interesting. It describes how our body adapts to the external threat in a stress situation. And another very interesting theory is the conservation of resources theory, where stress is thought to be caused by a loss of resources, or the fear of a loss of resources, or if we have invested resources and we are not able to replenish them. And in this model, resources can be both material things, such as money or material belongings, or they can be mental or abstract things, such as self-esteem or social status. So this model allows for quite complex explanations for stress situations that take a lot of factors into account. There are also a couple of theories that specifically deal with occupational stress, with stress that is caused by your work. For example, there's the job demand control model, where the demands you face are weighed against the amount of control you have. And there's also the effort-reward imbalance that deals with a situation where the reward you get does not match the effort you've put in, or is not appropriate for the effort you've put in. In regard to the fight or flight response I presented in my video, there is also a theory that this fight or flight behavior is specific to males, and a female counterpart has been described, which is called tend and befriend, where you tend to your young and you try to befriend your herd and other members of your species to seek for support and protection. And you can also have a look at that. Wikipedia is a pretty good source for those stress theories. I will provide links for those I just mentioned in the video description. Those stress theories mostly deal with stress as a psychological phenomenon. But of course, you can also approach stress from the biological side. And if you want to learn about that, this is the book for you, Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers, from Robert M. Sapolsky. In this book, Sapolsky describes in detail how a stress reaction works in your body, which glands secrete which hormones, and what effects those cause in other parts of the body. And you learn everything about that in his book. And furthermore, you will learn a lot about all the adverse and problematic effects stress can have on your body, and all the health issues and illnesses that can be caused by stress. So it's not such a cheerful topic, and that's also one of the reasons I didn't talk about the biological aspect a lot in my videos. It may frighten some people into better dealing with stress, but apart from that, it's not that helpful, because from learning about how stress works in the body and what adverse effects it can have, you can't derive conclusions on how to better deal with stress and what you should change and what you should do differently, as you can when you look at the psychological aspect. So I didn't talk about the biological side much. However, Sapolsky's book is really good. So if you want to learn everything about stress, both the psychological as well as the biological side of it, then this is the book for you. It also includes a chapter about stress management, and this is also pretty good, but of course it's only one chapter in a pretty big and complex book. Speaking about complex, it's not an easy book to read. There's a chapter at the very beginning where Sapolsky mentions a lot of different hormones, and then he says, yeah, well, you don't need to remember all those different hormones. They will appear so frequently in the coming chapters, they will, stick to your memory. And they do. So this is quite a complex book, but a pretty good one. And Sapolsky is also a renowned expert in matters of stress. So we've reached the end of this video, and also for the time being, the end of the topic of stress. Now, stress is a pretty important and complex topic, so I will create further videos about stress for sure, but as I said, after creating some want to have a look at some different topics, because in this channel I want to present a wide range of soft skill topics. Let me know in the comments how you liked my videos about stress and which topics you would like to see in this channel in the future. Also, if there are some sources regarding stress you really recommend, books or blogs, websites, whatever, please also let me know in the comments, and I'm sure this will also be quite helpful for other viewers. Thanks a lot for watching. Have a nice day. See you next time.